So the future of web governance. Both Cameron and I will be presenting it in this last session, and excited to get into it. So 3 things: Web Governance 101, Web Governance at a customer, CHG, who's participated in this Edge event. We've had a few people from CHG. And then finally, what web governance is looking like at ObservePoint, what our roadmap is, what our vision is. Okay, Web Governance 101. Last year, we actually got into this a little bit at our Edge event last year. So everyone that was there last year, you'll see some common things, but there's also some new things that we've added in. So before we get into the framework, feast your eyes, behold. Paul Winkeljohn is this guy's name. And he's a real person. This is a person that I met when I first started doing some work in the late 1990s. Now, this picture was probably a little bit earlier than that. This has got some 1980s vibes. But Paul Winkeljohn was in the basement of my father's company's office. He was down in the corner. I don't know if he was smoking a cig in that corner. He may have been. And I remember going down there, meeting him, and just wondering, what does this guy do? He's surrounded by computers and cables and cords and all sorts of stuff. He was the company's webmaster. He was in charge of the website. He was in charge of all of the technology. And back in those days, that was the guy. It was a one-man band. And like we saw yesterday, John was that one-man band. For many websites, actually. And you fast forward, this has more of a 90s vibe. We went from 80s to 90s. You fast forward from these days, and it went from being one person to a team of individuals that took care of the website to then teams of people. And I remember back in around 2010, some of you may have had a similar experience. I remember an analyst put together a list of about 100 technologies that were in the marketing and web space. 100 technologies. And I remember looking at that list of technologies and thinking, there is so much technology that is being created. That same list now, 15 years later or less, is over 10,000 marketing and web technologies. So the pace of change has been breathtaking from these days, from what we're looking at here, the day of the solo person in the corner webmaster. Trust. As complexity has increased, as this has now become distributed teams across your company, your jobs, each one of you, is to create trust in your org. People are relying on you for data that they trust, for brand experiences that they trust, that you're compliant, and that you can trust you're not going to be fined. And that job, the job that each of you have, is increasingly more and more complex. The more distributed those teams become, the more hands in the cookie jar there are, creating and maintaining that trust is extremely difficult. Sometimes even difficult enough to maybe lose some sleep over, to maybe even interrupt your career when that trust is broken. So it's incredibly important for you to create that trust, not only for you and your roles in your career, but also for the companies that you represent. The stakes are real. There's very poor decisions being made on very poor data, and we all know that. It happens all the time. And there are fines that occur, reputational damage, something as large as, a privacy fine, but something as small as clicking on an ad and going to a broken 404 page on your site. Also a broken experience. The reputation damage can be very real. So trust is the name of the game. And that's why we've had this event this week, why we will continue having this event. It's to bring us all together and understand how can we in our jobs create that trust, especially as our environment undeniably becomes increasingly complex and more distributed. And I want to highlight in the name of the event. This is a web governance event. And web governance is not, it was a one-man band way back in the day. It is not. It is a whole host of individuals now, of which you play a part in that role. So let's talk about 101 and what are the tools, what's the framework that you need to make sure you're playing your part in creating that trust. This framework right here, in my opinion, is deceptively simple. It's one that every time I come back to in my career, I realize, I've got some things that I need to do. We use this as a product team. Often we will look at this framework, we'll say, okay, how can we better build the platform in a way to support this framework? To break it down in red, you've got reality. That's just assessing the current state, understanding the current state of what's actually happening. In green, you've got the standard. Those are the standards. This is the type of data that we expect. This is where we expect these tags to be loading, these tags not to be loading. This is what we expect around privacy and cookies and what cookies to be loading and not loading. This is what we expect around broken pages, 0. You can create a whole host of standards across all of the disciplines within web governance. And that's what goes in that green circle right there. Then once you have established your standards and you have monitored your reality and assessed your reality, that's when you can get into the blue delta. That's where you understand, okay, what's going wrong? Or what reality is, where aren't we up to our standard? And that's when you take action. And so I invite everyone to take this framework back to your day-to-day work and think about, am I monitoring reality? Have I assessed reality enough for my role in the website? Do I understand the standards that I'm judging reality based on well enough? Are those truly established? Do I understand the delta when it happens and can quickly take action on that? Very powerful framework. You take that framework and then add to it in web governance, there are a whole host of disciplines. And here in this room, we have represented a large number of disciplines: web analytics professionals, privacy professionals, professionals that are tasked with any technology that's on the site, technology migrations. There's a whole host of disciplines. These are the umbrella terms: technology and data as a discipline. There's a bunch of sub-disciplines underneath that. Experience, web experience governance, a whole bunch of disciplines underneath that. And then compliance, privacy, accessibility, etc. So when you think of that initial framework of governance, and then you apply it to all of these disciplines, it can get pretty complex, pretty quick. And then to make matters worse, you have to do this across your entire web ecosystem. And this is something that we've talked a little bit about, but many of us have multiple domains, large websites, many third parties that are sending traffic to that site, and your site's sending traffic to them. And the entirety of the ecosystem is very complex. But it's those three things, when you bring them all together, that's how ObservePoint thinks about web governance. It's this framework where you understand reality and your standards, understand the delta, and you know how to take action. It's taking that framework and applying it across all of those disciplines within web governance. And then it's applying that to your entire ecosystem. No page left behind. Okay. It's no longer a one-man band. We're all in this together. We have our different roles and specialties, but it's all of us together that forms Captain Planet. So with that, we're going to take this framework and do a deep dive and show how this framework was applied to the company CHG. For that, Cameron Cowan's going to come up.
All right. I like the Captain Planet. I'm going to ask Voltron. Does that work for anybody? Voltron. It was a better example. All right. I have the awesome opportunity to work with a few folks at CHG to put this framework into a practical application. And we're not going to show you all of their data that we dug through and all the things they're doing right and wrong. I'll highlight some of the right stuff and kind of shove some of the wrong stuff under the table for now. But I want you to see how this all comes together in a practical world, and think about, how does this apply for your website? When I think about CHG, part of the reason we wanted to partner with them was they were a good representative of what we see just across our entire customer base. Not one website. How many total websites, Nick?
Oh, 10-ish.
10-ish domains.
Yeah.
Okay. And they're not huge, but they're also not small. We have some customers, in fact, customers in the room. I was talking to somebody earlier that said they had 450 domains. Yikes. You definitely need automation for 450 domains. But usually when you have that many sites, you also only have a few pages. It's 100, it's 200, it's 1,000. We have other folks in this room that have a single domain and a single website. But you're dealing with 5, 10, 15 million pages. So no matter what end of that spectrum you're on, you need something, a framework to put this all together and to do it in an automated way. We're working with CHG because they're a nice fit right in the middle. A cross domain, multiple domains, and also a decent size, a decent volume of pages. Nick Homer, sitting here in the front. In fact, Nick, why don't you come up for a second? So Nick is give it up for Nick. Nick is the senior product analyst at CHG. What does that mean? What do you do? What's your job?
Comp Health companies, group, I think it's Comp Health Group. We do, Heather said locum tenens, but that's basically recruiting medical providers to fill tough to fill spots. So you need a brain surgeon in Montana, and I don't know, how do we get one there? And we need them now. So
they're not just tons of them just hanging out.
Yeah, we've got them in the warehouse, and we ship a brain surgeon up to Montana.
Okay, so when we hear CHG healthcare, it's not necessarily what a lot of people think when they hear healthcare. It's helping get the right people to the right places so they can deliver the healthcare.
Or staffing company.
Yeah,
awesome. Masquerading as healthcare.
Yeah, okay. You also heard on this stage yesterday from Heather. Unfortunately, Heather had to take off, so we couldn't have her join this session. I think she also saw some of the results I was pulling for her privacy stuff, and she immediately wanted to get back to the office and make sure they were 100% buttoned up. But one of the things I loved about this was we were actually chatting with Nick weeks ago about what would this look like, putting this into, we hadn't even thought about it necessarily for sharing with all of you. We just wanted to talk to somebody we liked, a brand we knew about, and see how this fit. Well, when we were doing Heather's run through for her session, she's like, oh, I know who our analytics guy is. And she was so excited because she knows how rare that can be, especially the larger the organization gets, the harder it is for Heather to know Nick. Real quick, I'm just show of hands. How many of you know, if you're on the analytics side, privacy, if you're on the privacy side, analytics, how many of you know your counterpart by name and could actually reach out, email, call them? Okay. So we're not yet Captain Planet. We're working on that. So that was about a third of the room from where I'm sitting. And part of the reason we're partnering with Nick and that we love working with Heather is because they've already bridged that first gap. Now there's a whole other pillar that we'll be talking about, and that's the marketing folks. They're not the data and analytics folks. It's not the privacy folks, but it's really a three-legged stool. And we're trying to bring all these folks together. So when I think about what we were doing for CHG, in fact, Nick, just give us the quick run through. You got 5 of the 10 brands that you had us look at. Real quick, how do we distinguish between these 5 brands?
Comp Health and Weatherby are focused mostly on medical providers, through doctors. RNN is nurses, and then Global Medical, GMS, is sending doctors overseas, rather than everything else is mostly domestic.
Okay, so, yep. And as I understand it, Comp Health and Weatherby are your 2 biggest, just by volume and traffic and pages. So we actually did a lot of this analysis across all 5 domains. We wanted to know what that looked like, what the volume was. When we came to Nick and we're like, hey, would you like to use the ObservePoint platform? And he's like, yeah, sure. What do I use it for? You guys are the specialists. You do it, and you tell me what I should be doing. And so Rob and I grabbed this framework that, thank you, many of you that were here last year, help us build that. We came to the show with kind of a bare bones approach, and you all helped us fill that in. So a lot of what you're seeing is thanks to working with you as customers, as users of the platform to build that out. And as we looked at these 5 brands, applied this framework. Now, I'm going to focus in first and foremost on reality. That's ultimately what ObservePoint does. We're all about, first and foremost, what is the reality of your website, of your web properties? Good, bad, and other ways. I'm not here to judge. I just want to tell you what is. Now, the standard side of things comes later. That's once you say, okay, now I know that what is, I have my inventory of tags and cookies and pages and interactions. I also need to know what ought to be. And that's where standards start to be spliced in. But let's start with the reality, and specifically the reality not only of one domain or one page or one set of information, but all the websites across CHG. When you boil it down, how many of you are familiar with this pane right here? You've seen it in our UI? Okay, good. This is how you kick off a brand new audit. Most of you have at one point or another had to start an observe point scan, whether that scan be an audit or a journey. It's using our scanning engine to go get information about what's happening on my web properties. There's really only 3 components to building this out. And when we asked Nick, the very first question, we're like, how many pages are on your website? How many pages? Do you know how many pages are on your website?
I still don't know the answer.
He's going to find out today.
Yeah.
Not only not knowing across all those properties, he's got 10 domains, as we mentioned, but understanding even one of those domains can be very, very difficult. I'm looking out over the crowd of people I've been chatting with the last couple of days. I'm gonna pick on somebody. Amy, for your company's website, how many web pages are there? Arthur, because I know how many domains you're working with. How many domains do you have that you're working on? 100 domains. And because you've been an Observe Point customer a long time, surely you know exactly how many pages across all 100 domains. North of 5,000 per domain. Okay, keeping some control around it. Quite honestly, and I'm up here kind of burying my soul here, as Observe Point, in the past, we haven't done a great job of helping you know how many pages are on my website. And if you don't know how many and where they're at and how to point to them, you can't start filling out and telling us where we should be looking. What are the pages that you care about for us to help you govern? So the what is critically important. We're going to get to the how and when in a second. But when we asked Nick, he didn't know. He said, you guys tell me, how should I assess this? So when we started looking at it, really for me, it came down to 3 core components. The first is an unbounded crawl. So send Observe Point to my homepage and let it run. No limitations, whether it's 5 pages, 5,000 pages, or 500,000 pages. Little sneak peek, we're going over 250 for those of you that want more. Just let it go. And I want to understand everything that's there. And yet, unfortunately, even if you have completely unbounded access to every page that you can crawl, start at the homepage, grab all those links. Go to each one of those and grab all those links, and then go as far and as wide as you can. It still won't get you everything. And unfortunately, there are some in this room even that when we say, well, how do you do privacy compliance? You say, well, I just scan all the pages on my website. I just pop into Observe Point one page and set the max limit and go. Well, how can you be privacy compliant if you don't even know if that's all your pages or not? Okay, the second one, hurrying up a little bit here because I know Nick cares about this part. As the web analytics guy, he's got a pretty good sense of what's actually getting traffic, or at least what's getting traffic and recorded in Adobe Analytics.
Nope, I have a good idea.
Okay, so do you remember for your biggest site, Pump Health, right? Roughly how many different pages, page URLs, does Adobe Analytics record for you on a monthly basis?
I don't even know. 8,000. 8,000.
Okay. I wasn't going to do this, but I'm going to test you.
That's distinct URLs?
Distinct URLs.
Distinct URLs without query strings.
Yes. No individual pages.
Yeah, let's do 7,501, Bob.
Oh, we're playing Price is Right. I will play. I'm checking. I have $20 in my wallet right now. This is on the table. This is for you. The game is Price is Right. And we're going to be looking at these 2 components. I'm going to come back to some of this in a second. As I cruise to just web analytics and unbounded crawl for Weatherbees, okay, you're going to get 4 chances of this. Okay? In Adobe Analytics, we saw 9,538 analytics URLs, unique URLs over the last 30 days. How many pages do you think Observe Point was able to crawl to knowing that information? If you get any of these within 1,000,
it's not Price is Right rules.
You're getting the $20. I'm not just doing over or under. How many pages do you think we found on Weatherby's when we said, just go wherever you can go?
I mean, your yellow circle is smaller.
Ooh.
But you're throwing me off. I'm sure. Ooh. Let's go with 6,000.
6,000. Oh,
Higher?
yeah, this is what we need for Price is Right.
Okay, I'm listening.
Whoa, yeah, you're changing his mind now. I like this.
Sticking with 6,000.
He's sticking with 6,000. The answer is 7,604. Okay, no, you still got 3 more chances at this. We're going to hit your brands here. Okay, we then went to Global Medical Staffing, GMed. It had 2,889 in analytics that actually received traffic within the last 30 days. How many pages do you think ObservePoint found?
1,500. Anyone? And no one's yelling? Okay, we're going to go, given the similar ratio, let's do 2250.
2250. The answer is 5,265. So in this case, we actually had 82% more, not 20% less. Okay, now you got to rework the ratios here. Number 3, Comp Health. We found, when we said this was your largest site, 31,658 unique pages that received actual people going to it as measured by Adobe Analytics. How many pages do you think we found using our scanning engine?
50,000.
50,000 on the nose. Okay. The answer is only 10,834. That's 2/3 of the pages we just can see because you couldn't crawl to them, even if you said crawl wherever you can crawl. These are pages, many of you have heard me talk about it, but the idea of the dark side of the moon, that there are things that even if you scan everything possible, you're never going to get to unless you point directly at it. And yet we're starting our audits and our journeys with a single page and saying, you do the hard work. Okay, one last chance. $20 is still here. CHG Healthcare itself is like the main corporate domain. It's one of the smallest ones. It should have the lowest amount of variability. 1,309 pages found in Adobe Analytics. How many unique URLs did ObservePoint find?
Yeah, I'm going to go with 3,500.
3,500. The answer is 1,098. This was actually the closest coupling. It was we had the most.
You were throwing me off when you said that.
I told you it was going to be the easiest one. All right, I got to keep my money. I'm just going to have to find something else for your painting troubles. Okay, so but the point here is that there's no right ratio. Nick was looking for the ratio. Is it this much above or this much below? It's all over the place. And as I look at your websites and the customers I'm working with, we're seeing a similar trend. Sometimes there's thousands and tens of thousands and millions of pages that we find in our scans. And that's far more than anyone ever goes to. And at other times, there's a whole bunch of traffic that a scanning engine simply can't get to without further direction. It's not that ObservePoint can't scan those pages. I've actually taken all of these, lumped them all together, and did a comprehensive scan across everything that we now know about Nick's information for his website. The last one I'll show, and I'll actually show you this data, so no putting you on the spot. We pulled in the sitemap. Now, let me rewind for a second, because this is important. And Nick, if you want to have a seat for a second, I've put you under a lot of pressure so far. I'm going to go a little out of order here. So when I think about this, we've got the web analytics, we've got the unbounded crawl. For many of you, my number one urging out of just understanding this is please go to your analytics tomorrow, get an export of your top 1,000 pages for the last 30 days, your last 6 months, your last year. You got a whole table of Adobe folks right here that knows how to help you to do that. Adobe Analytics, Google Analytics, whatever it is, get your top pages. I'm not saying all of them. I'm just saying your top 1,000 pages and put that in a scan and check those pages explicitly. Don't just tell ObservePoint, I'm lazy or I don't know where to go, or so here's my homepage and crawl 1,000 pages. It matters what you need to govern. Last thing we looked at primarily was a site map. Now, I was always under the impression that the whole purpose of a site map was to be a comprehensive catalog of all of the properties you have on all your domains. Unfortunately, this has morphed over time where a sitemap right now is mostly just, here's what I want Google to crawl. It's for SEO purposes, and I don't update it very often. Once a month, maybe even if that. And so we wanted to use these as triangulations. Actually looking at all of the pages can include a lot more. Sam talked about it. I've called you on several times now, but I love the use case. There's also pages that exist off-site in my media campaigns, on social platforms, in paid search and email, and all of these other places that may not be in any of these sources that helps you build a better comprehensive view of what am I responsible when we say web governance, and then actually tell it to explicitly go to all of those places, not just hope a crawling engine can get you there. Okay, so we're going to triangulate around these 3 core things. If you're looking at these 3, you're probably getting the vast majority of everything you need. And if you don't know how to do this, or you want help doing this, that's what ObservePoint is here to help you do. We don't want to just be a crawling engine that crawls mindlessly. We want to get you to exactly what you want. So now jumping back ahead to RN Network, we did this. So, and Nick was very gracious. He gave us access to essentially whatever information we wanted because he knew it would help him make better decisions. So we looked at the sitemap. Sitemap had almost 11,000 pages. We looked at analytics, which had almost 9,000 unique pages, and we looked at the unbounded crawl, which only had about 2,500 pages. So there's a lot of pages on the dark side of the moon. The pages people were getting to and viewing and interacting with that we couldn't scan if we just mindlessly said start at one page and go from there. What you've actually been looking at over here on the right-hand side, that is almost exactly proportionally what we were seeing. So not only were we seeing different numbers of pages, but they weren't concentric circles. Man, I've just been jumping back and forth, and that's fine. I'm going to crank back one more time because what I think of as the ideal is this. I think that the sitemap should include everything. I think that an unbounded crawl should be able to get to most things, and I think the number of people that are actually interested in certain content and certain pages and certain interactions should be a subset of that. This would be wonderful, because then we could go to just the sitemap as a source of truth. But that hasn't been true in years. Maybe not back to Winklejohn. What was his first name? Paul Winklejohn. So I know I'm spending a lot of time on this because I've been digging into these numbers, not only for CHG, but for a number of our customers over the past 2 months. And this is a huge opportunity, especially as we're bringing together those pillars of the analyst that has all this information for web analytics, but that's just one component. And the privacy professionals that are responsible for everything and on the hook whether somebody visits it or not. And the marketers that are sending people in from all of these different channels. Hopefully not a lot of broken channels, but we got some of those too. And we want to get you closer to that what. So in this case, we've got 17,000 deduplicated URLs on just RN Network for Nick to go now say, this is what is on this domain. And we put this together for all 5 of those sites, and we'll do it for all 10. Okay. I'm cruising. You're going to have to throw something at me when I'm running out of time. 2 other things I want to quickly hit. How? This is where you all are very, very good. Our ObservePoint customers are phenomenal about saying, well, when I scan something, this is exactly how I want you to scan that thing. Data layers are a big thing for the analysts, and they need to make sure the data layer is mapping to the analytics. So give us just a little piece of information, and now we can confirm a whole other set of technologies. As Mike and Clint highlighted very well in their session yesterday, as Tim Mansell talked about just earlier today, using custom actions, OP custom tags, is another way to add just a slight configuration, and all of a sudden now it's a whole new how. You're telling us, I don't want you to just load the page and see what happens. I need you to recreate this type of user experience. And I want you to capture all this custom data as we do it. Last one, that's something we've been building out a ton lately for the privacy folks in the room, whether it's trying to understand how you are or are not respecting the GPC signal, which is now required under California and Colorado. Keep me honest, Elizabeth. California, Colorado, anything else require GPC? Okay. I wasn't sure of the third C, Connecticut, but in the United States, whether you want to or not, if a browser has the GPC signal on, they're saying, I want to opt out even if I never clicked on any banner, even if you never even gave me a banner. So whether it's that, or you opt in explicitly, or you opt out explicitly, all of these are different user states that you need to check. This is the how. This is what you are all very, very good at today, and what we hopefully continually improve our platform to do to give you more control to get to the how. A lot of the how resides around the use case library. We've shown this to many of you over the course of the last year, year and a half. A lot of the questions I asked to help Nick were straight from this information. It was all about, for analytics, it was literally just go down the list. Is analytics everywhere it should be? When it shows up, is it populating all the EVARs and SPROPs and events as it should? Is it mapping back to that data layer? And if the data layer is missing or analytics is missing, I'm going to have a gap. It's actually one of the findings I want to talk to you about. We actually found, props to Nick. I mean, this guy knows what he's doing. I searched every single one of those domains, 17,000 just on our network, and I searched 5 different domains that were 4 of which were, or 3 of which were bigger. I didn't see Adobe Analytics on 3 pages out of over 100,000. I don't know how you do that.
I think that's worth $20.
It truly is amazing. I have spent my career looking at websites, and it's one of the most buttoned up implementations of Adobe Analytics I have ever seen. So we went through all of these questions and we started answering them, and we answered them not just for Nick and his team. We went across functions. So we did custom configurations. We talked to Nick, but we also made some assumptions about what Heather would want. And we know the marketing team has certain things they need to check. So here's just a very small handful of custom configurations I put in for the probably 2 or 3 dozen different audits I created to answer those questions. Many of them we've talked about this week. A lot of things around custom data collection, forms, images, keywords, page performance, SEO elements. All of that's possible today in the ObservePoint platform. We looked at those user states I talked about. Are you opted in or are you opted out? I've got a star by because blocking tag management. Some of you know about this today. You know that you can block any tag or technology on your website. If you block your TMS, you see where you're most exposed because you then know the hard-coded tags that are coming even when the TMS doesn't fire off. And everything needs to be governed in that one spot. The reason I started is because in just a few weeks, looking for a head nod from our CTO, we're actually releasing what's called Easy Block. We're getting this hack of blocking your TMS or any other tag out of file substitution. You don't have to upload an empty file and say, swap these 2 things. You just say, here's the tag I want to block, and go. I got a woo for that. Yeah. Rob's about to tell you about all the other woo-worthy stuff. Real quick to finish with the information we learned about CHG. From an analytics use case, I mentioned a few of these things. We're looking at tag presence. Do I have full coverage? And Nick is awesome at that. Do I have any broken or slow loading tags? There was a few, and I'm talking like a few hundred out of several 100,000 total calls. That's phenomenal. Tag accuracy is the data going to, like I said, the right variables, the right EVARs, the right SPROPs. We looked at the data layer, I mentioned that. And then finally, my other starred item, cookie initiators. So for those of you that don't know, haven't been in the tool in the last couple months, cookie initiators is huge for us. It's the ability to say, I now not only know the entire inventory of cookies on my site, I know exactly which technologies, which tags are initiating them in exactly which line of code on every single page. Thanks, Tyrone. We're about to release, within the next month or so, the next version of cookie initiators, not doing that only at a page level, a page-by-page level, but summing and aggregating that up all the way to the audit, whether that's 100 pages or 100,000 pages. Nick, I'm going to call you back up one last time. Because the second thing and the main thing we were looking at was privacy. We knew Heather was going to be here. How did you meet Heather?
Oh, I thought you were gonna skip this.
No, I'm hitting.
Yeah, on the what are the superheroes? Captain
Planet.
Captain Planet. Yeah, I was the corporation dumping oil in the water. I was the web analyst. Like, this will all. If I ignore web governance and all this, it'll just go away. And so we've been, I don't know. We had OneTrust, but actually wasn't hooked into Adobe. So yeah. Anyway, that's a bad admission. But it wasn't. Yeah. Wow, I should sit down. Anyway, December 23rd, everyone's heading out for the holidays, and someone decided to turn on OneTrust all cookie blocking or something like that, and it just took down analytics, and we didn't know until we came back from the whole break, and so we didn't have data for like 2 weeks, which was not great. and also a reminder to set up notifications and alerts in your analytics platform, because we all do that, right? Yeah. Anyway, so that was we kind of, some people plan ahead, some people are slapped in the back of the head by it, and so that's when I got working with Heather to say, wow, we got to figure out how OneTrust can do its thing and Adobe can do its thing, and we got it working semi-okay, I think.
Fantastic. We need to be talking with each other. I think far too often it takes a December 23rd experience like that to really smack you up the side of the head. Learn from the experience. Reach out as you go home this afternoon, as you finish off your week. If you don't know who your counterparts are, or in privacy or analytics or marketing, figure it out. Ask them to coffee, take them to lunch. Just sit down and say, hey, I just want to understand your world. Hopefully what you've gained from this experience at Edge this week is that Captain Planet feeling that you want to work together, because when you do, things actually become pretty beautiful. You don't lose days or weeks of analytics data because somebody didn't talk and all of a sudden OneTrust is blocking everything. On the flip side, you don't implement OneTrust thinking it's going to work great, your CMP is functioning properly, and then there's the marketing and analytics team who keep popping pixels on the page, and all of a sudden you've got 30 or 40 unapproved cookies and tags, and now you're no longer in compliance. We're fortunate that all of this stuff can be done through the Observe Point scanning engine. And answering these questions for Heather is just as easily as answering all the questions that Nick and his team need to function properly and to button up the very, very small holes that they have. Thanks, Nick. Before I hand back over to Rob, just a quick nod. Observe Point does more than just privacy and data and analytics. We talk a lot about those because they're really important, and we have a great ecosystem of data professionals. And we have a growing ecosystem of people that are all about privacy and consent and making sure you're doing the right things on your website. And you've hopefully heard all about that this week. But understanding the marketing use cases, we had our friends from Blink come up and present earlier today, all about how do you get more automated ways of validating not only what's happening on your site, but all the things that are pointing into your site. Email, paid advertising, social media, etc. All of those are just as important, and they're important from a data perspective. Can Nick and his team measure how the CHG marketing team is performing on all of their marketing channels? If they don't measure right, they're upset, but he gets the finger pointed at them. The measurement's wrong, the analytics wrong, the implementation. If the privacy policy isn't there or the consent banner isn't there, it's not the marketing team that even knows how to do that. It's Heather and her team that get blamed. So when Rob talks about trust, that's what we're doing, is we're building trust, we're building cross-functional trust, and we're also making ourselves look pretty good in the process. Last bit for me, we can do this across an entire website about looking at general things, but when I think about the last component, I talked about what a lot. Get into the what. Make sure you know everything you're responsible for, not simply what you randomly scan. Understand the how. What are all the different use cases and user states and testing that you need to do in all the various ways that represent how people actually use your digital properties. But Nick, I'm gonna ask you, you don't have to come back up, but just microphone real quick. If you have this information, this is just a one-time go, and we're gonna give you like a whole dump that says, here's everything Observe Point learned from you after engaging with us. That's just one time. That's just the last 30 days. That's just the efforts we put in today. How often does your team release or update code on your website?
Weekly. Yeah. Are you saying from an analytics
standpoint?
Yeah. How often am I publishing in launch?
Yep.
Yeah, pretty frequently, and we're adding and taking down tags and pixels all the time.
Yep.
So,
And it's not just analytics. You guys are responsible for the whole tag ecosystem of all the stuff that's on the website. So whether you're using a tag management system like Launch to do it, or Telium or Insight or whoever it is, whether you're pushing manually yourself, we all have cadences. You can't just do one thing one time and call that web governance. You need an ongoing cadence, and it's different for each of these functions. For Nick and his team, it may be once a week as they push new things out through launch. For the privacy team, they may want to check at least the top 1,000 pages every couple days, because if they're ever out of compliance, that could be big money and big fines. For the marketing team, they maybe want to check multiple times a day, because every single time a broken link is clicked on, Google's going to charge you for it. They don't care if it's broken or not. So understanding the what, the how, and the when is core to putting together the framework that Rob talked about early on. And we're so grateful to CHG for allowing us to share this information and to talk about the journey together. We're hopeful that we can do a lot of this for you as you put this into practice as well.
Thank you, Cameron. Okay, so we've talked about Web Governance 101, a deep dive into applying that framework to CHG. Now we're going to wrap up with how is ObservePoint envisioning our platform to support you in your web governance efforts. Okay, a little piece of generative AI art. Again, behold, this is the beast, and the beast is web governance. The complexity, I've talked to many of you throughout the last couple of days, and the complexity that we are trying to wrangle, it's a beast. We don't know the full breadth of our ecosystem. We don't know exactly what we need to do to make sure we don't get fined or have reputational damage from noncompliance with government regulations. We don't know who's working on what and who needs what data regarding the website. We have some of those pieces, but many of us don't have all of those pieces. And so web governance is a beast. And our job is to tame that beast, is to play the sweet, sweet web governance melodies. When we think about all of these various disciplines within web governance, it starts to become a little bit overwhelming. And this isn't a comprehensive list. This is just some of the sub-disciplines within web governance. And the way ObservePoint looks at this right here is a little bit more overlapping Venn diagram of all of those different disciplines, because really at the heart and the core of all of those different disciplines for web governance is largely the same data, largely the same processes. And that's where the ObservePoint web governance platform sits, at the heart of all of those different disciplines. That's the platform that we're building. So when ObservePoint talks about our vision and what we aim to do for each one of you, it's creating the platform at the heart of all of those different disciplines. Let's talk about this platform just for a moment. We have our collection layer. This is where we're collecting all of the data. These are our audits, our journeys, any way that we get data into our platform, that's the collection layer. But that's raw data, and it's extremely complex and disjointed. So then we have our insight layer, and this layer is where we bring all of that data together and organize it in a way that you can access it through the top layer via the UI or the API. This is the ObservePoint platform, and I want to talk about a few things. In fact, let me go back just for a moment. Hopefully for those of you that have been ObservePoint customers for longer than 3 years, hopefully you've seen some pretty big changes and updates to each one of these layers, to the collection layer, the insight layer, and the UI and API. Yes, that's woo-worthy. That has been our laser focus as a product team, and hopefully some of that passion that Cameron just shared on stage, you can feel the product team and the ObservePoint company, very passionate about web governance and delivering this product in a world-class way to you. And you'll continue to see many more enhancements that come along. I actually want to highlight a couple that have happened over the last few months, the last year. So alerts, that's something that came to our platform and is critical for web governance. So when you log into ObservePoint, you see that little bell icon everywhere. And what this does is it enables you to say, when this thing goes wrong, when I'm out of compliance with this standard, alert me, notify me, so my teams know what to do. We've had excellent adoption from our customer base, and I know there's a lot more runway for here. These alerts are extremely flexible, so if you don't feel like you're necessarily using them to the degree that you could, I invite you to get back in and keep building alerts. Super important for web governance. So in every report, now you have the ability to share. This is also extremely important for web governance, because if you're on the web analytics side and the privacy team reaches out and says, hey, I need this information, you now have the ability to send them that report, give them an idea of the information that ObservePoint has. And the beautiful thing about that share link is they don't have to have a login.